everyone. Welcome to Truth Teller Tales. I'm Ellen, and I'm dedicated to interviewing those truth seekers who became truth tellers in this most incredible time in our history. And I just know that they're going to be studied for generations to come. Um, Today, I'm oh, very honored to have an incredible investigative movie maker, filmmaker, and a truth warrior for years. He's been in this, and wow, I can't believe he's here with me. I'm so excited. I can't even tell you. Jason Bermas, how are you?
I am very good. How are you today?
I'm fantastic, and wow, I was at the Turning the Tide event in DC last month, I think. It was September, obviously, and you were there as commentating one of the days, and I came up to you. I was like, can you talk to me?" And so you were just so wonderful to say yes, and I really appreciate it because you have been in this for a long time, and one of the documentaries, Loose Change, that you were involved with way back, that is one that many of the folks that I've talked to bring that up as their part of their awakening. So you're just you've played such an amazing part and still are playing an amazing part in this awakening. And and if you could just give a brief introduction of what your focus has been in this truth movement.
Yeah, so I guess I did come on the scene via 9/11 with Loose Change, and then we followed that up with, the second edition was the big one, but then we followed it up with the final cut. I made another movie on 9/11 after that, whereas those films, although they went outside of the realm of the physical anomalies, whether that be the Pentagon or Building 7 or what happened in Shanksville, they weren't really telling that story, so I decided to do that in Fabled Enemies. Alex Jones produced that. I actually went out to Texas to make it, and I became his stand-in host. He was gracious enough after that to do my big picture movie, which is Invisible Empire: A New World Order Defined. This time when I moved out there, he had just moved into the bigger studios that you now see today. And not only was I the substitute host, but I was the first guy to ever have a show on InfoWars all the way back in 2009 called The Info Warrior. I made one documentary film after that that I still think holds up and probably is my best work. You don't have to hear my annoying voice narrate the whole thing, which is nice. And that is Shade the Motion Picture. I'd encourage people to go back and watch that movie. I had about a 20-minute section on Bill Gates warning everybody what Bill Gates would eventually do, warning everybody that he was already invested in pharmacological um, businesses, but also in farmland, Monsanto. I talk about how he came up through Microsoft, was recruited by the Council on Foreign Relations, the antitrust suit. So I'm still extremely fond of that picture. After making that movie, I took a little bit of a dip, tried to go back into normal life. Although I would go on other radio shows, I was kind of inactive. But then 2017 rolled around, and Bilderberg was in the United States again. And for those that have not seen my work, if you really want to look at one of the apex organizations of the power structure, Bilderberg, to me, is that organization. And I was running a bar at the time. I was like sitting there. I just done all the finances, and I just looked it up, and I saw it was going to be in Chantilly, Virginia. Now, I'd actually gone to Chantilly, Virginia in 2012 when they were there. That's the intro of Shade the Motion Picture. I'd encourage people to go check it out. You can tell there's like
Totally.
over 1,000 people there. Jones is there. Big Jim Tucker, who, God rest his soul, was the guy that brought Bilderberg into the mainstream arena, or really the alternative that would pierce the mainstream. And it had been there in, I believe it was 2008. It could be 2009, but I'm pretty sure it was 2008. And I remember that Jones went and I was substitute hosting. So I was just like, you know what? Not only am I going to go to this thing, I was going to give my buddy Luke Radowski a call. Now, for those unfamiliar with Luke, he heads up We Are Change. You've seen him as a co-host on Timcast many, many times. He's often there. And I'd known Luke prior to We Are Change. We got together at New York 9/11 Truth before the even. I think I might have met him on the 4th anniversary of 9/11. But we also got together prior to the 5th anniversary a bunch, prior to him doing that. And I was like, are you going to this? And he told me, and again, this is all the way back in 2017. It might have been 2018. Again, I'm getting old. I'm getting aged. All right. He said, yeah, I'm actually on the way right now with Tim Pool and the Dollar Vigilante, and Dan Dix is on his way as well. We're all going to be there. So I decide that I'm going to leave the bar at like midnight. We close at like 2, wrap it up at 3. My managers were there. It was fine. I drove to DC, so I got there somewhere around 5:30 in the morning or so. It's about a 5-hour drive from where I am in upstate New York. I slept in this little parking lot that I'd done before on this trip because it's right around the corner. It wasn't like I was getting a hotel. Like when I say slept, I was going to be out there at 7 in the morning. So I took a nap in this parking
Wow.
lot, and I get out there, and frankly, I'm super disappointed. There's like 10 people there, not even, whereas, when I had done this so many years ago, again, hundreds, if not 1,000 people are there. Now, as the day progresses, a few come out. Luke's there. Tim Pool's already gone. InfoWars is not there. Jack Posobiec, who I had no idea who he was, right? And no one really did at that point. He was amongst maybe like 15 people that were protesting, and they were chanting things like CNN is ISIS. I think InfoWars was having a contest at the time or something. And I'm like, what is this? Because for those that don't know, at Bilderberg that year, you had 5 different representatives. And that's why I do think it was 2017. You have 5 different representatives of the Trump administration at the time. That included steering member to this day, Peter Thiel, who's very close to that administration, and J.D. Vance. Chuck Liddell had been in the administration. He was there. H.R. McMaster's, who was short-lived in that administration, he was there. And I just said, if this were the Barack Obama administration, this would be the Bilderberg of Obama. What are we talking about here? So Jack starts shouting me down with a megaphone that I'm a Hillary Clinton supporter and this and that. And I'm like, dude, you have no idea who I am. And then one of the people in the 15 group had been on InfoWars long enough. They're like, I know who you are. He's not with Hillary Clinton. He's like, he used to host on InfoWars. So that cooled it down a bit. But anybody can go watch after that fact. Both Luke and Dan Dix of Press for Truth put it up there. I debated Jack for like 20 minutes, and I made him look like a fool. I
Fascinating.
you go watch it. I'm not saying that because it's not true. I mean, he had no answers, and he kept looking down because I'm not a leftist, and I'm
Right.
not easy dunk on him kind of guy on any side, and I kind of take pride in that. That's who I. The truth is the truth. All right, it's not subjective. It is objective, and you can have your own opinions, but at least have the decency to look at as much available evidence as you can, and then have discernment so you have real talking points. I'm just saying that. So I must have, it'd been a while since me and Luke had talked. I must have impressed him because he immediately offered me a job at We Are Change, and was like, we went to lunch, and I started doing it part-time. I would end up going full-time there for a little while. So I got back in the mix. I end up leaving the bar. I'm back in this media mix again. And now this is like 7 years ago. Basically, during that time period, all of a sudden things started getting demonetized. So it's not like anybody who knows this arena. I'm not here to make money. I'm not here to be famous, but I got to pay my bills.
Yeah.
I take care of my 2 nieces, and that was kind of new at the time. They were 6 and 8 when I first got them, around the time that I was in the bar. My sister's still around, but, I do a lot. So I'm not their parent, but, that's new bills. And all of a sudden, my pay got cut. And I'm like, man, what am I going to do? So I actually went back to an old YouTube channel that I started back in 2007. This was before you could live stream, before it was monetized or anything like that. I remember like peak, I had like over 10,000 subscribers. I had something less than 5,000 when I first started. And I decided, well, if this is cut, I'm going to relaunch my channel while I do the We Are Change stuff. I'm just going to get up super early and start kicking out videos. Now, the first video I actually redid all those years ago, I think that this is definitely 2018. It was actually on the TV series True Detective. and the first season of True Detective into the second season. And those that don't know what True Detective is, it's this mini series show that is fiction. The first season's with Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey, but it's heavy into child trafficking and the occult in these aspects. So I'm like, well, this is right up my alley. Maybe I can,
Yeah.
get some other audience members. I remember I had a peak, and it was almost an hour-long video in the live stream. I think I had a peak of 8 people watching at the time. We didn't hit double digits. Okay, no big deal.
Yeah.
I get done, and by the end of the week, that video had 30,000+ views. Okay, and
Wow.
so yeah, and so all of a sudden, I'm regaining, and I'm able to monetize that channel for the first time ever. During that run of monetization, I got to, I think, about 73,000 subscribers, and it was actually making decent money. I ended up, leaving We Are Change, focusing on my channel, using other platforms long before Rumble, like Rockfin, which also was able to help financially support me. I was on GoFundMe. They hadn't kicked me off yet. COVID 1984 nightmare comes. Okay. And all of a sudden, I'm being demonetized on videos. Um, I don't get kicked off of GoFundMe until January 6th, so that's down the line. But like all of a sudden, you're seeing the deplatforming start to happen, right? In April of 2020, I was fully demonetized by YouTube, and over that time period of those 3 years, they actually took my channel from me 5 different times on YouTube. I had to shame them on Twitter at the time with my audience. And basically, you would have to tag at Team YouTube and be like, hey, what are you doing? Sometimes I'd get a message on what video did it or a strike, and sometimes they just take it. Got it back every damn time. All right. And I kicked and screamed for it. I literally got remonetized less than 48 hours ago. Okay. After 5.5 years of being demonetized on that platform. And thank God, because like again, there's a lot in between that story where I end up on the Reawaken America tour. I'm talking transhumanism. I've been in this game a very long time. But
Yes.
now we're on the verge of almost 75,000 subscribers. I'm gonna hit that damn 100K mark. I promise you that. And it's kind of reinvigorated me, not because I love YouTube as a platform.
Right.
I mean, literally, it is the military industrial complex. Google is not a private company. They have massive contracts with organizations like NASA on artificial intelligence and quantum computing. Their origin story is a Defense Department origin story. Larry Page and Sergey Brin, essentially, you had these two guys. They were smart, but they'd been kind of recruited at university, and they became part of what was known as the National Library Initiative. And this was the initiative to digitize all of print media throughout the world. So they win that, and you can see their thank you letter to both NASA and DARPA at the time, because DARPA also gives them the original search algorithm that Google gets. So if you just want to go that as a baseline, that should raise alarm bells. The initial
Right.
seed funding afterwards comes from InQtel, which is the financial investment arm of the Central Intelligence Agency. So
Wow.
when you go that far, you're thinking, well, okay, Google now has Alphabet as their big shell. So Alphabet is above Google, is above YouTube. For those, again, that do not remember, Google initially comes in saying, don't be evil. They took that slogan away many, many years ago, but they used to have it up on the wall, don't be evil. When they bring in their initial CEO, it's a man named Eric Schmidt. We had mentioned Bilderberg earlier, right?
Mhm.
At the opposite side on that steering committee, of which there's about 20 members, in Thiel's very libertarian techno paradise, you have Eric Schmidt. Okay, so Eric Schmidt is a steering member of Bilderberg, openly has worked with the Defense Department, the national security agencies, all the and anything privatized in those manners as well. So Schmidt is a big part of that. It's all Defense Department. So Google also isn't really YouTube in the beginning. One of the ways that we were able to get Loose Change to the popularity level that it was, remember I mentioned I had an old YouTube channel. A lot of people forget
Right.
that YouTube is really the last social media that was created by legitimate dorks that sold it off. Like it wasn't like this whole Defense Department thing. So
Yeah.
YouTube had limited you because like I said, there was no live streaming. If you had a director's channel, which was extremely rare, you could put up a video of more than 10 minutes. Everything was 10 minutes or less. So Google came in and they created Google Video. And remember, they're a part of the search engine, so it was very easy.
Yeah.
They let you put up to 4 hours of a video up. So Loose Change would be in the top 10 of the top 100 8 times in a bunch of different languages. Like we would absolutely have a couple English languages up there, but it would be in Spanish, it'd be in Farsi, it would be in Italian, you name it. People would, upload that and it would be in the top tier. Google eventually buys out YouTube because YouTube always maintains an audience. I think that initial purchase was for $8 billion. If there is an outward technopoly, as I like to call them, there could not
Yeah.
be a bigger one than Google. Let's really think about it for
Right.
a minute. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
More devices in the world. I know everybody's that's hip got the Apple devices. There are more of us Android people, which is Google. In your kids' class, okay? What are they? They're not using PCs anymore. They're using Chromebooks. All Google,
Yeah.
all Android, Chrome, and Android operating systems are now merging. So they got you on the software end. They are the number one search engine in the world. The number two
Yeah.
search engine in the world is YouTube. So they got the top two. The number one
Wow.
video platform in the world is YouTube. All right. And then you have just a plethora of other things that I have alluded to. Did you also know that Google has an immortality division?
No.
So let's just, we can do that one live and just show everybody that. So it's called Calico. And not only is Calico Labs looking for immortality, they're looking to de-age you as well. So Ray Kurzweil, who some people, he's certainly amongst the godfathers of transhumanism. And let's just put this right up there. So this is Calico right here, one of life's greatest mysteries. I don't want your announcement. Thank you. But yes, they're literally trying to stop aging and create immortality. That's part of Google. And Kurzweil has worked for them for almost 20 years. I think he got a job there in 2008. This is the godfather of the singularity. This is one of the things that I talk about on tour. But Google in no way is a privatized company. Just because it's
Right.
on the stock market doesn't make it privatized. I talked about the NASA contracts. NASA and Google together. NASA, Google declared quantum supremacy, which is basically AI supremacy, right? All the way back in 2019. And I mean, that's on their own website. So,
Oh
like,
my word.
so this is not
What?
all people have to do is just scratch the surface of what Google really is. It's just like
Yeah.
Elon Musk ain't your buddy, pal. He's not your
Right.
friend guy. He's the number one defense contractor in the world. And
Yeah.
not only is Musk the number one defense contractor in the world, do you know what time period that he increased his wealth by 600%?
When was that?
Well, why don't we just bring it up for everybody? Because we talked about some of these names a moment ago that he beat during this time period. So again, I show my work. He had a 600% increase during the COVID 1984 nightmare. Okay, who did he beat out? Let's see. Is that chart just not coming up? Yeah. I can assure you the people that are supposed to be on this blank chart,
Oh,
yeah, but that are in some, it must be the browser I'm using that it's knocking it out, are people like Bill Gates, people like Sergey Brin and Eric Schmidt. They're all on the list. Warren Buffett's another one on the list. He beat everybody. Okay. Do you
yeah.
know what he was doing during that time period? And I haven't even really scratched the surface of all those defense contract companies. Take a guess what he was doing.
I have no idea, but I know you're
Okay.
gonna tell me.
Yeah, no, it's not good news, everybody. So Musk, because Tesla is not a car company, Tesla is a military industrial complex company, teamed up with CureVac, and they're the ones that built the mRNA micro factories that printed up the shots. Okay. So you think this guy's your buddy? No, he is in a mask bragging in front of these machines that they're printing up the hate and lie shots. And that's where he's making most of his money all of a sudden. Now, let's just hit just a few of the companies that this guy's involved in. Okay. And by the way, I don't think he's running these companies. I think he's much like a spokesperson for them. I mean,
Yeah.
again, let's pull it back for a second. When you look at a company like Apple, Steve Jobs is definitely the face and he's managing that company. He's not the engineer. And it would be enough just to
Right.
manage something like Apple. When you're talking about Tesla, which is not just CureVac or the cars, they're also building the humanoid robot Optimus that you just saw doing karate. Okay. So that's one company. That's Tesla. Then you got Starlink, okay, that people think is like a home internet company. No, that's the Defense Department that has a back door into that. Do you know where the highest concentration of Starlink receivers are, the dishes in the world?
No.
They're in the Ukraine because those things were utilized to hook into the Ghost and Sidewinder drones specifically and be communication systems. And when the old Musker-Do launches up SpaceX with those satellites, we'll get into that company in a moment. They also launch what is known as DARPA's Blackjack program. Again, we show our work here. So we'll just type that in, DARPA's Blackjack program, which, by the way, is now being superseded because Musk is building the new spy satellite network for the Defense Department. But Blackjack is the global information skin that surrounds the planet. All right, so the Defense Department has full access to Starlink. They launch Blackjack, and he's building the new spy satellite network. Yeah, do you really think they're that concerned about Musk when they attack him in the media? Hear any of this? Never.
Right.
Never.
Yeah.
So then let's go into SpaceX, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to the moon. We're not going
Right.
to Mars. That is the most childlike, brainwashed idea we have as a society. And we have it because we've watched way too much Hollywood Johnny nonsense. We've been indoctrinated literally since we were kids from Disney that that's what they're doing. They are not. They are weaponizing space. All right. They're not only just weaponizing space, they're doing things below low Earth orbit, et cetera. Let me just give people some numbers on the moon, for instance. Okay. They say the moon is about 238,000 miles away and change. Now they're saying that Artemis is going to be taking people to the moon this next year and that they're going to go around it. They've been saying that for years. They've actually been saying we're going to land. Now, Artemis is a SpaceX program. So they're moving away from NASA, although NASA's always been the Defense Department. And it's just a rebrand. All right. Now, 238,000 miles. The Russians, prior to Apollo, while we were doing Gemini, were literally kicking our ass all over the place in every regard in space. First spacewalk, first man in space, first multi-person mission, first woman in space, dominating us. And then all of a sudden, we not just leapfrog them, it gets crazy town. So what's the highest that the Russians have ever been in space? You got a guess?
Mars?
No. I'm not. I'm talking about manned missions in space. We can all debate on satellites and pictures. How far have they sent a human being? By the way, the Russians and the Americans have been going up together to the ISS for decades. We'll talk about how high the ISS is in a moment. And up until about 2000, I think 19 or 20, they were doing so via the Russian military, via rockets in Kazakhstan that was actually taken over by Musk. So now SpaceX takes up these astronauts. How far have the Russians ever been? Again, we've said that we've gone 238,000 and change and then back. How far have the Russians been?
A great question. I have no idea.
270 miles.
Oh.
200, not 270,000, everybody. Not 2,700. 270 miles. Okay.
Wow.
ISS is not even 300 miles in the air. They're about to decommission that. We should highly question what rockets can do in that sense. Now, again, because we're talking about Musk, they did send a manned mission that they're claiming is much farther than 300 miles. Okay. It was called Polaris Dawn. It was about 6 months ago. And it had 2 men and 2 women astronauts on it. This is the furthest women have ever been in space. That claim is, I believe, 1,200 and change. So 1,200, just 236,000 plus miles short of the moon. But we sent human beings there and then back. Rocket technology, to me,
Mhm.
especially if we're talking about human beings, does not seem viable to do what they're telling you it's going to do. And they're telling you we're about to build nuclear reactors on the dark side of the moon. I mean, come on. So I know I got a little deep in the weeds there. We're not done with
That's
Musk yet.
okay.
He's got some other companies.
Yeah.
So
First, I just have to say, that this is what's fascinating listening to you because you're so passionate about this and you have so much information in your head, names and number information, and that is what intrigues me so much, is why someone like you can just get some information, follow it through, spread this information, and understand what is happening and what has been happening in our country and in our world. And other people couldn't grasp 1 minute of what you just said. And to me, that is what's fascinating, Jason,
let me say this.
about this whole.
All right. First of all, I am 46 years old. I tell people out of the gates, not only am I not the smartest guy in the world, out of those 46 years, I maybe know this much of what's really going on. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no way I can delve into every subject. I can't be right about everything. I have the humility to know that
right,
I'm a human being and I will get things wrong. When you go
right.
beyond those 46 years, when I'm not even on the planet, we get into the weeds of 100 years. Whoa. When you start talking about few hundred years, 1,000 years back, ancient civilizations. Now you're talking about big bangs or dinosaurs. I don't know that I trust any of it. I know there's
Mhm.
carbon dating out there. I know we say this and that. I didn't speak the languages of those people that left scrolls or cave carvings or literature. I wasn't a part of the culture there. I don't have any firsthand experience whatsoever. And I think that there are just so many people out there that can't take a step back and have that
Mhm.
kind of humility. They may
Right.
think, and the other thing is, I am a rather curious person. I want to unlock as
You
many
have
of
to
the
be.
secrets of the universe as I possibly can. But the
Yeah.
other thing is lies don't make friends. Okay. And they certainly don't make for good business or relationships, et cetera. And I always say this, I believe that love is the ultimate truth and truth is the ultimate love. And that doesn't mean the truth is easy. Okay. The truth
No.
can be really tough and it's
Right.
hard. Ignorance isn't bliss. Again, during that COVID 1984 nightmare, I was just so happy to be remonetized. A lot of people were asking me, you were talking about how people don't know things, why they took me off. And I go, well, because I'm right too much of the time too early.
That's
And
correct.
I made the comment. I mean, you don't really think that a virus leaked out of a Chinese lab, do you? I mean, that's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
right.
Yeah, and I start
Yes.
explaining that, we have Chapel Hill, we have the Department of Energy, we have Eco Health Alliance. I talked about DARPA's partnership with Moderna. In fact, are you aware of that partnership in 2013? So,
Absolutely.
I keep
Yeah.
talking DARPA. And so
R
DARPA, and and these were some of the reasons a lot of people didn't want me on social media. You know, DARPA, which comes out of that Cold War space era of ARPA and the fact that the Soviets, again, were beating us in everything. They had the first satellite in space known as Sputnik, and that was the big concern that created this agency. Um, they partnered back in 2013. We'll bring it up right here. And they did so for a $25 million grant on mRNA therapeutics, and they were calling it uh, gene therapy through the whole thing. So Moderna never had a product ever. They only had a product after COVID through this program. And let's see, where is it? Right here at the bottom. Boom. This grant is part of the DARPA program called Adept and Protect, autonomous diagnostic to enable prevention and therapeutics, prophylactic options, and environmental contagious threats. The goal is to perform technologies that can be deployed safely and rapidly to provide the U.S. population with near immediate protection against emerging infectious diseases and engineered biological weapons. So this is literally the partnership that began through our Defense Department for a company that had no products for them to print what we just talked about by sequencing it with Elon Musk, their defense contractor. All right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why they didn't want me on the platform, because I was like, hey, check out this bioweapon they just released on everybody and check out its origins in the, for instance, it's also ridiculous to think that COVID 1984 was not in the United States until like February or March in the U.S. Guys, all the evidence shows that it was in the United States in September, October probably the latest, but absolutely November. We had the worst flu season we had in years, and then the flu disappears the next year. We also had teenagers in hospitals that they were blaming on vaping and calling it popcorn lung. Everybody forgets that. Hey, have we seen a big epidemic of popcorn lung? Did the teenagers stop smoking the vaporizer? Did they change the ingredients? No. All right, so you had all that. And then when you look at the actual diagnostics and testing, it's very clear that it was here in the U.S. and it was seeded. That's why I think that they fast-tracked, when they realized it had come, that event 201 drill, where they basically did that dry run in October prior. Then, you also had high-ranking military officials in Wuhan, China, saying that that was seeded. It wasn't a lab leak there. It was seeded in China at the Wuhan military games that the U.S. attended. A lot of people also forget that initially, when all the hype about the virus was going on globally and it was happening in Europe, etc., that a bunch of Iranians, some of their top political and military brass, dropped dead in like 48 hours, and they blamed that on COVID. There was a lot going on in the background.
Well, there's so much happening. There's so many layers of deception, Jason, that one of my questions, I want to talk about your life, but one of my questions is, where do you think, and I love that you said the more you know you don't know. I mean, and that's the truth. But because the layers of deception is all around us and in history and currently, and everything that we touch and do and live has layers of deception. Where do you think um, the disclosures to the normal people who aren't paying attention are going to happen? Do you think it will be with our health as they're trying to uncover and things like that? I mean, because you're hitting on levels of deception that, where is it going to start? Where is it going to hit the normal folks?
I mean, the
What
Epstein
what
thing is
layer?
kind of a breakthrough moment, right? I mean, I always thought it was going to be 9/11, and to some extent it
Yeah.
is. I often talk. I think I even might have mentioned it at the Turning the Tide event that I watch late night comedy, and I see all these comedians out of nowhere. There's a 9/11 joke. They're mentioning Building 7.
Yeah.
Even this past weekend, I was on a plane. And I was watching the Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend podcast, right? And it must have been within the last year that he had David Spade on. It's on the plane. And it's only like an hour or so long podcast. 9/11 comes up several times during the podcast. For instance, they tell a story about how Lorne Michaels would go down to ground zero and took him down to ground zero at one point. But then at the very end, when the 9/11 gets brought up again, David Spade goes, "Oh, and Building 7. And then he says it a couple times, and Conan O'Brien knows exactly what he's talking about. And O'Brien goes, Building 7. And like, they all know it's hit that part of the zeitgeist. But I think that because a lot of people did serve in the military, don't want to believe it. We are in the Middle East. They've shied a little bit away from that issue. Whereas with the Epstein issue that is out there, it's pretty cut and dry. The vast majority of us don't like pedophiles. All right.
Yeah.
So when you see this high level pedophile with all these political figures, banking figures,
Yeah.
hurting kids has obviously struck a chord with people. Now, people like myself that have dug a lot deeper, we know that they're never going to release all of these files. And a lot of that has to do with not only the Israeli angle, but the U.S. angle as well. A lot of people want to say it's one thing, but remember Robert Maxwell, the father of Ghislaine Maxwell,
Mhm.
he started in British intelligence during World War II. He worked for
Mhm.
Mossad. He was with the KGB. I mean, obviously, delved into U.S. intelligence as well. Epstein was an arms dealer. Okay. And an arms dealer that went back to Iran Contra as well. One of his clients was Adnan Khashoggi, who was an arms dealer and had a harem of women, many of them underage girls. Weird. And there were never any trials for him. Now, one of the aspects that almost nobody knows or remembers of Iran Contra is the weapons that were bought and sent down to South America and the Sandinista. We didn't buy them. You know who bought those? Israel bought those. Israel would buy the weapons from Czechoslovakia and other Eastern European nations. They would then ship them to Bolivia and then down into South America. And then when they shipped the contraband, the drugs back up, we would then sell them on the black market and then repay Israel with that money or through other black operations funds. Mark Rich was a big part of this. So it shows that symbiotic relationship between the United
Mhm.
States and Israel in these black programs. And Epstein was a huge, huge part of that. Okay. For instance, we talk comedians. On the They Might Be Drunk podcast, comedian Lewis Black talks about the one time that he met Epstein in his New York home. Now, a lot of people know that Ehud Barak would go to that New York home many times. They know that he was the ex-prime minister of Israel, but he was also the ex-defense minister of Israel. So Lewis Black goes there with some comedian buddies. And he talks about, and anybody, I've played it on my show. It's up on my X account. You go watch it. He talks about how Epstein pulled him into a side room and they had a whiteboard up and a whole bunch of stuff on the whiteboard. And he goes, "Do you know what that is?" And Lewis Black's like, "No, I have no idea." He's like, "This is already getting super weird for me." And he goes, "I was talking about weapons systems with the Israeli defense minister last night." Okay. You want to know where his money comes from? I know Ghislaine Mack. Well, he was able to get money back from people. No, when you're cutting multi-billion or hundreds of billions of dollars in arms deals, it's pretty easy to skim a few hundred mil or a bill off the top.
Yeah.
And
Right.
if you take a look at his Zorro Ranch home, are you familiar with that home?
No, I'm not.
So again, they don't talk about that home nearly enough. It looks like it is on a desert military base. That cannot be reiterated enough. In fact, I know I've got a picture up here somewhere. I've got a bunch of Epstein stuff always on hand. Let's see. Is that it right there? I could, you know what? I'll just type it in because I've got other stuff that I'll probably bring up, but we'll just type in Zorro Ranch. All right. So Zorro Ranch, when you see this thing, it is a sprawling estate. In fact, the Clintons actually had a small ranch on it. Okay. So these are when you see how far away it's got the landing pad, there's an overhead of the estate. We're talking about hundreds of miles in the desert. Man,
That's crazy.
there's a really good view. You see what I'm saying right here?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's up on a hill. Let's see if it's up on a hill. Come on, man. They don't want to just give me the good stuff. It's up on a hill. There's a pad and there's no one around. Never, ever, ever, ever been investigated. I mean, Epstein clearly was a part of intel operations, arms dealing. And by the way, he wouldn't be the first. One of the reasons I talk about Hollyweird so much is because they're an integral part. Check it out. I mean,
Absolutely.
Arnon Milken. Oh, past Israeli spy. Oh, arms dealer. Sidney Pollack, the bad guy in Eyes Wide Shut. He also arms dealer for Israel, spy. I forgot all
Wow.
they're open about it. They're open about
Yeah.
it. It's like a badge of honor. So again, James Bond and Jason Bourne can't be the billionaire pedophile Epstein. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing, and you make my head swim because you realize you just realize that we've been, um lied to about pretty much everything in every area, but it's all purposeful, it's all psychological. That's why Hollywood is a part of it. They had to psychologically keep us dumbed down in every way and have a narrative that we're supposed to follow, right? And so, I love how you have all of this in your head. I've seen you on Mel K before, and you remind me of the male version of her. I mean, you guys have facts and figures in your, like, it's amazing that you could that what you have, not the knowledge that you have. So because of that, I wanna take a shift. I I it's just amazing to me. I'm so curious. So now I just wanna hear about you, Jason. So I wanna hear where you were born, your childhood, w becau t that made you the man that you are today. So tell me about where you were born and kind of your life growing up a little bit.
Sure. I was actually born in Hollywood, Florida, but didn't, I have no memory of being down there as a kid because my brother was born a little over a year and a half after I was. And, my mom was only like 16 when she had me. She
Oh,
comes from like a
wow.
pretty big Italian family. So they're down in Florida. Basically, my grandfather was trying to retire at the time, I would assume. And she was the second youngest of, man, I think of seven. Michelle was younger, Marianne, Candy, Johnny, Nikki, and Sal. Okay. So big
Wow.
Italian family on that end. I assume because we moved back to upstate New York, not super upstate, but in Dutchess County area, so about 45 minutes outside of the city. I think within the first 2 weeks of my brother being born. So to me, it seems like my grandfather kind of took charge of the situation. My dad was like a couple years older than my mom, but obviously he was still a kid too.
Mhm.
And I end up having one sister with my dad's family. I end up having a half sister later on. But honestly, I grew up as a pretty poor kid, moving around a lot, and I guess getting into a lot of fights because of that. Didn't like bullies. I didn't like getting picked on. I wasn't the toughest kid, but I remember that specifically. Me and my brother used to tear each other's heads off. I was pretty cruel to my brother actually at the time. And my father ended up going to prison. Like he was in
Oh,
and out.
wow.
So
Oh,
he went to prison for dealing coke. I think right around the time I was 10 or 11. He got 5 years, but he was kind of in it. He was kind of in and out pretty quick and got work release. My father, to his credit, tried to better himself. He got into what they called graphic design at the time, but it was more like commercial art because there was no computers and things like that. I always was big on drawing. Always did like to cook. Kind of got those from my dad, and so he
mhm.
got a degree and he actually did get a job. But then he ended up dead like 6 months later. Like at
You're
36.
kidding.
No, he ended
Wow,
up
what
dead.
happened?
At the time, he'd just gotten out of jail. I remember he showed up because when he went to jail, my mother had met this other guy who would become my stepfather, and his father was like super rich, so bought us a house way away from that area. I remember at 12 years old, we rolled up to this house in a place called Fort Plain, New York, and it was in a Grand Union parking lot, and there was literally an Amish family in horse and buggy having a picnic on my new small lawn. So huge culture shocks all over the place as a kid, that kind of stuff. But essentially, my dad showed up super skinny. And, we always talk about HIV and AIDS and those things, but what they don't talk about is hepatitis and how many people they killed with that with Hep C. And,
Right.
we think that he probably contracted it in prison. A lot of people do, in that area. And we're poor. We're not Kid
Right.
Rock. We're not Tommy
Right.
Lee. We're not Pamela Anderson. All of those people have Hep C, and there was medicine at the time. But just like with modern, they killed people. They basically euthanized you. So he was. I mean, he showed up at my house. He was in the hospital within the week, and he was dead within the next week. I don't think he lasted 2 weeks.
Wow.
So again, he wasn't even. He was on the way to 40 at 36. So now I'm in upstate New York. I've been in high school for about 4 years in this little, like, really small place, like literally Amish people around. I graduated with 54 kids. In fact, even though I'm Italian, I'm in such a small white redneck area that people assume that I'm Hispanic, and I get the nickname Paco that goes throughout my entire high school career. It's in my yearbook, and even into college because I ended up going to college with a few of my high school buddies. So you know, I guess as a kid, I was into sports. I didn't, although there were all these struggles, I always liked baseball. That was like my biggest sport. But
Mhm.
moving to upstate New York, I played a little basketball, summers in basketball with my buddies all the time, that type of thing. We didn't have a football team, so none of that. Uh, Eventually, my brother and I, like I said, we fought a lot. My brother did like
Mhm.
a little stint in rehab when he was a teenager. Me and him never kind of fit the mold. I was always in honor roll and those type of things. He had a little bit more trouble like keeping up in sports. But it's weird how we've kind of come together as adults. He very much, especially during my days at InfoWars, I'd send him books, and now I'm not hardcore enough for my brother. Talk about black pilled. My
Oh,
brother,
wow.
and I'll
Wow.
say this, he he attributes a lot of it to the fact that even though we both went to college, we both dropped out, and that we
Mhm.
didn't really fit the mold of like what a lot of our friends did, which is they knew they wanted to be teachers, or they wanted to get a mass comm degree, or they wanted to get a business degree, and they went and did that, and they went to a 9 to
Right.
5 and all those type of things, and they were worried about insurance and mortgage loans, and I couldn't give a rat's ass about any of that.
Yeah. Right.
you know,
Yeah.
brother has much more of a traditional family than I do at this point. But at the same time, I think that might be part of it. So I go off to college. I remember even during college orientation, I was pretty young. I still hadn't even turned 18 yet. So when I went there in August, I was 18 for maybe a month. I'd wanted to be a graphic designer, but I wanted to be in computer graphics. So I didn't even want to be in the college I was at, which is SUNY Oneonta. I literally applied to nowhere else other than a place called the Art Institute of Philadelphia. So that was a 2-year school. They had awesome animation, graphics. They were using Photoshop, which was new at the time. I was like enthralled. They'd come to my school a couple times, and it was part of like this larger network. I'd gotten in. And the day before we were supposed to sign the paperwork, I shouldn't even say day, like the evening, I came downstairs and my mother and my stepfather were kind of sitting there looking at me funny. And I'm like, what's up? And they're like, you can't go to that school. We can't afford it. And this is in May, right before graduate. And I've applied to nowhere else. But like
Oh.
I said, I had really good grades. I'd done well on my SATs. So they're like, they basically told me you can go to Oneonta with your friends. They all got in there. So I did. I remember applying and like my friends goofing on me and they're like, dude, it's May. You're not even going to get in. I'm like, you guys are stupid. I'm like, I'm way smarter than you. I got way better grades. I'm going to get in. And I got in and we were all roommates and whatnot. So during that college time, I'm basically, I had to take some of the base regular art courses before I could even get
Mhm.
to the computer art building, which is the only reason I went there, is
Mhm.
because they had this computer art building that back in the day had G3 Macintoshes. Oh boy, it's the Pentium 2 era, you dorks out there. And it was open 24/7. That was the sell to me, that I could go there and I'd have access to all this equipment that I wouldn't have anywhere else. And so the second year comes along and I'm taking my first courses, and I'm sick of hanging out with my friends that are still calling me Paco. And well, I'm only 19 years old at the time. I make a couple buddies at the meal hall I'm working at, which is where I learned to make pizza for the first time, which also becomes a big part of my life, and a couple guys that are in the art department. So now I'm spending most of my time either at work, in the bars, or in this lab. And it's certainly shaping me. Like I'm into Photoshop. Even today, I do all my own graphics. I run my own show. You see how I'm going in and out
Yeah.
like that. I do my own thumbnails. All of that, comes from that time period. But I also make friends with a couple guys in this fraternity, and I don't rush. I don't go to fraternity parties. It's the second semester of my sophomore year, and the guy, Pete Iandiorio, I love you, Pete. I miss you. Uh, he is the one that taught me how to make pizzas, a fellow paisan at this thing, and he tells me that he's going to give me his ID, so I'm going to have a fake ID, even though he's taller than me, doesn't look much like me, and he can get me what was a super deal on weed at the time, $40 quarters of weed, which I was paying like $80 or $100 at the time for. So I show up to the fraternity house. And when I show up there, they immediately start recruiting me. And they say, we'll give you a bid right now. We did the first night of pledging, but that doesn't matter. And I'd never really been in this house. I'd known a couple of the guys. One of them was my art buddy. Another was a friend of mine that I knew on the peripheral. But it was just my style. Like, they broke out a 6-foot bong with a 4-foot extension. They had this closet. It wasn't a bunch of like douchey, like, yo bro Long Island kids that I loathe to
Yeah.
this day. Like, they were down to earth kids. So I ended up joining this fraternity. That's shaped me a ton. They've been there for me a ton.
Wow.
So even like on the morning of 9/11, I'm a dropout at this point by 2001. I'm living with a couple of my fraternity brothers. They're Long Island guys, and they're the ones that woke me up from working late nights at a pizzeria that I got a job at from one of my pledge brothers. So like all this ends up kind of shaping into it. I'm still on the computer. I'm making pizza. And really, that's how I end up falling into Loose Change as well later on. So, like I said, they wake me up. They tell me that the towers are gone. Even that first day, I had weird questions. You know what I mean? But I
Right.
kind of bought into it. By the time years later that I, not only didn't buy into it, but I was the annoying guy at the party that was talking about politics, and I had burned discs, and I had collected all this stuff off of all these networks. That's really where I fall into the Loose Change thing, because I'm at my pizza place. I've got these discs, and I had thought that the guys were from DC because they'd done this original movie. They had a small website and they had a DC address. So I'm talking to Phil Savaggio. If you see this, Phil, another Italian guy. Good to see you, Phil. he's my
Oh,
yeah, who knew the Italians would play into my life so much? He's my delivery driver, and he's gone to high school in Oneonta. He's not even in like a college guy there. He's kind of going to courses, but like he grew up there. I hand him a disc, and he's like, my friends made this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, I went to high school with Corey and Dylan. And he goes, Corey's actually in town. He just got into town yesterday. They came back from DC. Dylan's going to be here in a couple of days. Should I call him and have him come down here? And I'm like, yeah.
oh my gosh.
So he does. He calls Corey up. I'm behind the pizza shop thing, and we start talking for an hour or so. And he kind of stops me, and he goes, well, we're making another movie, and I've got a script here. I'm going to go grab it, and I'm going to give it to you. And I want you to go through this script and tell me what you like, what you don't, what's right, what's wrong, blah, 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 blah. Now, I had just got in, I was 24 at the time, my first desk job as well. And it was fraternity brothers, by the way. When I got this job, I got it in the summer before school started, like literally in August, like maybe their school had started 2 weeks later. I couldn't find an apartment or a roommate. Fraternity brothers let me sleep in their extended closet. Like it was a walk-in closet. So I would sleep in the closet. I would get up at 6:30 in the morning. I would get on the bus. I'd bus to Cooperstown to this desk job, which I was a graphic designer finally. I had a secretary. It was the biggest deal of my life.
Wow.
I know, big time. I was doing print design. I was
Yeah.
realizing my skills, beauty school dropout, making it. But I'm still at the end of the day. And so on the bus ride to my day job, I'm going through this. I can't believe I'm going through this script. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to be great, blah, 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 blah. Like a day or so later, Dylan shows up to my new place, which again, I'm living with fraternity brothers. All of them separate, by the way. These are generations. Like it's truly been my second family. And
Oh,
one of them, he's another dropout. And at the time that I meet these guys and we start making this documentary film, he's a huge Hollywood assistant director at this point. He was the assistant director of, what is it? The Old Man and the Gun with Robert Redford. Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the Tom Hanks, Mr.
Mhm.
Rogers picture. He just did the
Wow.
it's the weirdest thing in the world, and like people laughed at him too. And I remember giving him his first piece of software. So even Dylan, when I first meet him, he's kind of standoffish. He's talked to everybody, you know, he's seen everything. But I've got a laptop and I've got all these, like I told you, I burned these discs. And Dylan starts looking at this stuff. He's like, well, we don't have that, and we don't have that. And then within a week, Dylan's at my house after work every day working on the thing. And like all of a sudden I'm part of the team. And
Right.
you know, from there, it's kind of just been a roller coaster. I know I talked a little bit about my story over at the Turning the Tide event on how, you know, local Fox News uh, was the first to watch the second edition, and we didn't even have them printed up onto DVDs. We burned one and gave it to them. It was at a Cindy Sheehan event. But you know, I've kind of just I'll say this: there's one part that I didn't put out there,
Mm.
and I think is kind of pivotal. Before I got the job as the graphic designer. Like I said, I
Mhm.
didn't have an apartment. I was going through this total rough patch of my life where I'm probably 23 years old. I'm a college dropout. Everybody's like, you know, you're crazy, Jason, because I'm talking about all these things that nobody else is talking about.
Yeah.
Um, I remember I had to go move into my childhood home, which my stepfather lived at, but my mother wasn't even there. He had an affair with the town judge that I had known. Like I knew all these people, and I had to
Oh
stay in
my
the room
word.
with my stepfather, and they're married now, and it's whatever. But again, just a cluster of life. And
Jeez.
so I'm big into this 9/11 stuff, obviously, and I saw the first Loose Change. I downloaded it via like Morpheus or Kazaa or something like that. And there was a associated site called Let's Roll 911.org that I'd been on all the time from Phil Jahan. He helped the distribution. And like I said, I found their website. I think that was the night when I watched it. I knew how effective it was going to be. Like I had no idea there was going to be another movie and another, you know, all that stuff or whatever. But I was just like, this is the thing that can really change everything. I am not a religious guy coming from the Italian family. I mean, I didn't even tell you about how I would have to go to church every day as a kid, but then my father ended up dating a pastor's daughter. So I actually lived in churches on the weekend. We'd actually stay there on a Saturday night. I'd have to wake up. I'd go to I'd go to both Sunday school and have to be in the front row of a church. To say I soured on church pretty early is an understatement. But you know, I tell people this: I don't tell you what to believe. I'd say I'm agnostic at best, but I do believe good and evil exist. And when I
Mhm.
saw that, I literally prayed to God and I said, "Please,
Mhm.
God, if you make me a part of this film, you know, I will do everything to try to, you know, fight to get this out in the right thing." And it happened a few months later, and it's like the biggest, I would say, uh, what is it called? The law of attraction moment in my life. Obviously, I had prepped myself for a long time, and you know, I'm not saying, you know, obviously, you know, I spoke to something, and it did
Yes.
come true. There is something bigger than us, and I do believe that we are, you know, we direct our own destiny. We really do, and we do have options, and that's what free will is. But if you truly do believe in something and your will is really there and your heart is really there, I think the doors open up for you. So yeah, I mean, I know we went over a lot in a little period of time, but
Yeah, but
yeah.
I just have to say a couple things. You know, what's so fascinating, Jason, is that I always wonder why certain people say yes to my little podcast. You did,
Mhm.
and I really do think, obviously, that there is a spiritual thing happening right now, and I do believe in God, obviously, and the fact that there are certain people that have said yes, and you're one of them, is means something to me. And I just have to go down the spiritual side of things just because as I've been doing these podcasts and listening to people's stories who are similar to you in that they're passionate, they're truth seekers, and then they want to tell the information that they found. The common denominator in all of everybody's lives has been an increased spiritual feeling about things and about the bigger things. Is that, and though you've soured on church itself, which a lot of people have that story too, actually, that connection that you have, and obviously that prayer you made speaks for itself. Do you feel that we're in a time unlike any other that is a spiritual type of awakening too? And what are your thoughts on that?
I'll say this. I think every time period and, certain regions of the planet have those resurgences, right? Historically, again, I can only read about them. I can only watch other historical works about things like the Renaissance, or how, say, Lutheranism came into play in these different aspects. I think we're in an eternal struggle, right? I don't know if that struggle is ever going to end, what it's going to manifest as. I certainly do not dismiss. I mean, when I was a kid, probably my favorite book, or the book that I gravitated most towards in the Bible, is Revelations. I'm always hesitant to say that we're in that time period or moving towards it. You can find numerous historical examples where people thought they were in that time period, et cetera. I think that there is a lot more talk about things like the Antichrist. I mean, when Peter Thiel, who we mentioned before, is doing a 4-part lecture series on it, and it's kind of part of the mainstream zeitgeist that people like Tucker are talking about. When you do
Yeah,
see what's going on in the Middle East and Israel and Palestine in particular, and how the Dome of the Rock or the rebuilding of Solomon's temple would, play into prophecy. You certainly have people of a religious nature that not only believe in those things, but want to move us towards those things. I'm
hmm
not trying to create any prophecy into reality. I'm just I've read the book. In case people didn't know, I get it. In the end, you win, but you lose first, and it's a bit of a rough patch throughout. It's it's not a great time. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I would say this. I think that we are all in that eternal struggle, whether we like it or not, or acknowledge it or not. And we talked about knowledge being power. I think the more knowledge that you have surrounding that, or at least willing to entertain, the better off you're going to be, because you're going to be in that spiritual struggle to your very last day in this realm of existence. And quite frankly, most of us really don't have an idea. And I would say none of us can prove what exactly comes next. But I don't think it's just instant darkness and there's nothing else out there. There's a lot to the human species. And I think that we kind of rock and roll. And that's why I'm a huge advocate against what they're trying to sell us on with this not only transhumanist, but post-humanist agenda. And you
Yeah,
ask what I've kind of dedicated myself to, that is
right.
the next frontier. And that's the
Yeah,
one where it used to be, I thought that maybe we could get some justice for 9/11. I thought that for a lot of years. I tell people now, stay human.
yes. I love that. You're absolutely right. And it takes folks like you who are digging into this, have the lifetime of understanding and progressive knowledge that you have throughout your life. And what is so interesting hearing your story, you just rattled off your life, and it was filled with I'm sure there was a lot you left out. What a roller coaster you were on, Jason. Holy smokes, from the very beginning. But you were able to really ride the wave, sounds like. There was a lot of turbulence in your life, and you were able to kinda stay on top there, which is just fascinating to me. And you've had this gumption about you, that this stick to itiveness and this strength about you too, to be able to ride all those waves, which has obviously prepared you for what you're doing now in your adult life, as you continue just to dive into this information. But what you're not doing is you're not allowing it to absorb in you, and you obviously didn't do that as a child too. To be able to maintain as a child and have good grades and be an athlete and all those things, you didn't absorb the chaos around you, as a child. Am I right about that? And that's kind of
I
what you're
learned what
doing
not to do.
today. You get
Learned what
Yeah?
not to do. Yes, I learned what not to do. Like I said to myself when I was watching all these things happen, I'm not going to jail. I'm not gonna be
Yeah.
on welfare. I'm not gonna, take from the state. I'm gonna work. I'm gonna be my own person. Look, I think first of all, a victimhood mentality is not a good one, and
Right.
unfortunately, our culture has really amplified victimhood mentalities. That's what these
Yes.
identity politics are. I always looked at it, and I had kind of a big revelation in ninth grade, and that was because global studies became a part. I got to see a lot of stuff outside of the United States that I'd never seen before, whether it was on television or in books or anywhere. And I realized all these other cultures are out there. I'd always known that economically we were better off than most nations. So even the poorest of the poor, I would look at and be like, it's not like I'm in Somalia right now. I remember all these other global conflicts that weren't. I mean, even you look at Eastern Europe, you look at what's going on in the Soviet Union, Bosnia back when I was a teenager, those type of things. I'm not in a war torn area. I mean, I guess I'll give one final like quip about my life. Last
Mhm.
summer, my mom was up here, and unfortunately, it's that victimhood mentality, and she's kind of put it on my sisters and whatnot. And I'm trying to break the cycle of the women in my life with these two kids, and they're doing great. They're in sports. They're on honor roll. They're kicking ass and taking names. But I asked my mother, and I said to her, Mom, not your kids. You can't answer your kids. What are you most proud of in life? And I just think to myself, how many things that I could rattle off that I am proud of, that I
Yeah,
continue to be proud of, and I want to be proud of things in the future. I'm certainly not done, right? And she
right.
goes, almost without hesitation, I survived. And I go, survived? She's like, I survived a tough life. And I go, Mom, you had a dad with two homes and a pool. An in-ground pool. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you made your own decisions.
Yeah,
That is exactly what I don't want those kids to say, and why
right.
I'm very hesitant to have you people around them to push that kind of mentality on them. To go, I mean, she's in her 60s now. To be in your 60s and that's what you say about what you're most proud of? No, sorry. And if anyone in your audience has that same mindset, it's not too
Mhm.
late. It's that you can
Right.
write a poem, you can write a book, you can make something, you can do something that you've wanted to do that might not be easy, but at the end of the day, once you do it, you will have a sense of accomplishment, and that will be better than surviving.
Exactly, Jason. Thank you so much. And that's literally, to full circle all this, that's literally part of the deprogramming that has to happen because that is programmed generationally in all of our thinking, that victimhood. But then we do have to have accountability for ourselves too, which is a hard thing to do, to your point. So it's all a thing. And I'm just oh gosh, I'm just so grateful that you're here. I know that I think that God has put people in my little path of interviewing for a reason, and you're one of them, Jason, and you're doing such incredible work. You have been, you continue to do so. I'll have all the information in the details here, and just know how grateful we all are that there are folks like you who have such passion and strength and goodness and messages for people, and your fortitude and reason and everything is just very much appreciated.
Well,
So
thank you
thank
so much.
you for all you do very much, Jason, and thank you for spending the hour with me. I just feel very grateful for that too. Thank you so much.
All right,
Take
bye-bye.
care.